2013, the entire world got shocked when 200 people from Maldives they went to Syria to support the ISIS. He has always portrayed India as the Hindu country, whereas Maldives as the Islamist country. He made Sharia the de facto law. You cannot be a person of any other religion except a Muslim and stay in Maldives. To be a citizen of Maldives, you strictly have to be a Muslim. And also, their constitution says it clearly that whoever disagrees with the fact that Islam is the only religion can actually be, executed.
International Yoga Day was observed just a couple of days ago, and while the whole world, including India, was actively participating in a lot of shows around them, and celebrities included, politicians included. In fact, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was here in Karnataka a couple of days ago, participating in the yoga event in Mysuru, in the Mysuru Palace, where MPs Pratap Simha and everybody else were present. Something unusual happened outside of India, but in India's neighborhood. There was an attack by a mob on a group of people who were performing yoga in Maldives. And this raised a lot of eyebrows, but unfortunately, because of the other political news that has come about in the last couple of days, it completely got shrouded and nobody paid enough attention to it. But basically, to give you a context, do have a look at this video and this should give you an idea of what we are exactly talking about. Now, anybody would actually ask why a yoga day event would be attacked. But there is a sinister pattern, is what many people are saying. And there has been a response from the local administration in Maldives. But to get to know about the details, I'm joined by Dr. Monica Verma, who's a strategic affairs expert. Monica ji, thank you so much. Very good evening to you.
Good evening, Sharon. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast.
It's a pleasure to have you here. First of all, what we know about who are the perpetrators of this particular mob. Are there any details given by the Maldivian government? What do you know about it?
So basically, if you look at whatever happened in Maldives, it presented a very sad picture of Maldives of today, and there have been constant doubts related to Maldives that what is going to happen to this country, how it's going to go forward, what will be the situation of Islamic extremism, what happens to the liberal and the democratic values in Maldives. And sadly, things have not been very encouraging. There have been examples of Maldives suffering from Islamic extremism. Just to quote a report, into 2013, the entire world got shocked when 200 people from Maldives they went to Syria to support the ISIS. And 200 doesn't make for a huge number, but just picture this: there are total 4 lakh people in Maldives. So imagine if out of 4 lakh people, 200 people go to join the ISIS and they see the Islamic extremists, the terrorists as heroes, then it's a very problematic thing. So right now, the investigation is going on in Maldives, and whatever happened with the yoga event in Maldives that was organized by India, name of Progressive Peace Party has come, and it's been said that this party which was in power before, Soli was in power. People from this party are involved, and also a number of Islamic scholars have been identified through video evidence, and action has been initiated
You have
against
been
them.
in touch with a few people from Maldives, and this includes senior officials from the government as well. But before we dive into that, how is the politics today divided? Especially because there is some sort of a strategic competition between two great powers, which is China and India today there. And I think there is a background and a context with that being the thematic reason behind this attack as well.
Actually, interestingly, Sharon rightly pointed out, that's an excellent insight from you that Maldives is a victim of great power politics. Now, how is Maldives is a victim of great power politics? Just look at Maldives, a very small country, right? And made up of different islands, of which many are not even habitable. People don't even live there. Now, how much clout does this country have internationally? Small country surrounded by two big countries in its neighborhood is always a problematic situation. because you are surrounded by two giants. So you have China on one side and you have India on another. So with Maldives, the things have been very interesting to follow for an IR specialist or an IR expert. That till the time Yamin was in power, it was a very very China centered and China focused, and they had a very very good relationship with China. So they were using China to balance India. And this is a common pattern all across South Asia, that the small economies or the small countries are always, trying to balance India, which is the de facto South Asian power, by using China card. So whether it is Nepal, whether it is Sri Lanka, whether it is Bangladesh, or it is Maldives, all of them use the same card, the China card. But in case of Maldives, things turn even more sinister. So you have to look at how far China has penetrated that country's political economy. China is a very, very big player in Maldives, all thanks to Yamin's policy, who very actively and very, in a very, very interested way, he invited China into Maldives for various kinds of economic investments, for various kind of defense and technological, interventions. So basically, Yamin is the man who has been nurtured by China to take on India. Indian influence in Maldives goes back to a very, very far time. Ideologically, civilizational links, and in many sense, Maldives has been a very close neighbor to India. And whenever Maldives needs, so when there was tsunami in the Indian Ocean or something happens in Maldives, India has always been at the back and the call of the people of Maldives. But Yamin's policies actively invited China, and Yamin's policies, actively uh, made China a very important player in the Maldives politics. Then came a break when Yamin went out of power, and in 2018, Nasheed was back to the scene. He was arrested. There was a coup against him, so all of that played out, and then he was back to the scene. And today we have a leader in Soli who's become the leader of Maldives, and this person is very, so you can't. There's a tendency of people calling him pro India, and that's because it's a very superficial analysis to say that this person is pro China, this person is pro India. All countries ultimately look at their own self interest, and you have to see where is Soli coming from. So he comes from the more liberal, from a more democratic setup, whereas Yamin comes from a very, very Islamist setup. In order to continue in power, he has always played the anti-India card. In order to stay in power, he's always played the Islam card. How does he play the Islam card? He has always portrayed India as the Hindu country, whereas Maldives as the Islamist country. See, he comes from the party of Gayoom. This party was established by Gayoom and in 2011. And where does Gayoom come from? He, for his 30-year rule, his autocracy in Maldives, he basically nurtured all the Islamist elements. He made Sharia the de facto law. You cannot be a person of any other religion except a Muslim and stay in Maldives. To be a citizen of Maldives, you strictly have to be a Muslim. And also, their constitution says it clearly that whoever disagrees with the fact that Islam is the only religion can
Right.
actually be, executed. That's the extent of religious freedom in Maldives. And this all of this was done by Gayu. Internationally, he was quoting all the liberal elements. Internationally, he was speaking Arabic. He's prolific in Arabic. He speaks very nice English. And using all this, as he, advanced his liberal credentials. And he is the one who could be credited with Maldives tourism industry. He's the one who started the $5,000 resort scheme. So, but at the same time, he's the man who also nurtured Islamists in his backyard, because he never thought that
Right.
you could be in power for that longer time until unless you make Islam the most important factor about your politics. So that imprint is there in Yamin. And people who, the investigation is still on, so it will be premature to comment on it, but there is a very very serious angle. And I have been in touch with people from Maldives, and people who are
Yeah.
senior journalists, people who are researchers, people who are currently in power also. So I've been informed that the progressive party of Maldives does have a role here.
How do
this
you
this
think is
belief
the
process.
civil society's reaction to this? Because I'm sure beyond the binaries of the politics that we may see today, if you speak to a journalist or a common man in Maldives, they may not have the same inclination as the politicians with vested interests too.
Actually, politicians definitely have a vested interest, and they have used their vested interest, whether it comes to their nurturing by China, or it comes to their further friendship with the Islamists. Common people are dependent on tourism as an industry. If you look at the economy of Maldives, the means of subsistence has been tourism. Due to pandemic, Maldives has taken the most difficult turn in its economic history. People have been suffering a lot due to the because of the lack of tourists in the country. So I think tourism is their main source of subsistence, and that tourism is dependent on Maldives image as a very liberal
Right.
society, as a very open society. Internally, there are many gangs that are active in Maldives. There are many underworld, gangsters who use their Islamic identity and who see the ISIS as their hero. That's also a truth about Maldives. But
No,
how
it's
many of
very
us know
sad
about that truth
because
of Maldives?
today
How much of
Maldives
that comes?
tourism is essentially supported and given all sorts of support by Bollywood, and it's very lovey-dovey on Instagram to see that. But the kind of radical politics there is in Maldives, very little discussion has been actually done on that. And I think as far as law and order is concerned, it shouldn't be a too great a task to actually nab some of these perpetrators, because at the end of the day it is a small country, it's a very tiny country. So do you think there is a deliberate delay, or the government is genuinely concerned about what has happened and they're acting?
Luckily, and I will really say, fortunately, India that lives in a very troubled neighborhood where we already have seen Afghanistan falling to Taliban, and we see what's happening to Islamic radicalism in Pakistan, and the long, long history that Bangladesh had with the Islamists. And thanks to the rule of Sheikh Hasina, that she took on the Islamists head on, and she's controlled Bangladesh, and now it's become a good law and order story where development is thriving, where their per capita income has increased. There is secular politics, though there are also instances of Hindus being attacked left, right, center, temples being vandalized. But still, overall, Bangladesh has been prevented from falling to the radical Islamist design. I think something similar is true for Maldives as well. For all the support to the Sharia law by Gayoom, to between 2013 to 2018, the way Yamin has nurtured the Islamists, the truth remains that the people of Maldives detest all kinds of these politics. They do not want Islam to be their main identity. Though the country is obviously Islamic, and we can see how Islamic is it because of the constitution, but the fact remains that they know they are dependent on tourism for their subsistence. And so even within the progressive party of Maldives, there is a huge section that completely rejects this kind of politics by Yamin. And they have split from the PPM, and now they have formed their own third way Democrats. So they have their own, political setup, and they have this MTD as they call it. And this MTD has become a split faction from the PPM, and now they are trying to focus on liberal politics, and the leader is also focusing on liberal politics, and he's trying to they believe in the kind of progressive politics that Maldives needs today, where there's a break from Islam, where there's a break from extremism, and there's more focus on Maldives image as a very open country, as a liberal country that invites tourists. So as far as the internal thing is concerned, they still have the constitution where you can't have a citizenship and all, but externally they want tourists of all kind to visit Maldives. That's a non-negotiable as far as the political
And do you
economy of
think there
Maldives is
is any
concerned.
sense of awakening, especially in Maldives, because Sri Lanka has been set as an example due to China's policies today? The country is in a state of emergency. They have absolutely nothing left in the reserves, and India can only help to a large extent. But even beyond that, even India cannot sustain Sri Lanka, because they have to help themselves out of the situation. It's not what I said; it's the Prime Minister who said this earlier today. So, but do you think the situation has improved over the last few years? Because I do remember that Maldives was a very big concern for New Delhi just a couple of years ago, and it seems to have been relaxed over the last couple of years.
Well, Sharon, if you talk about Sri Lankan situation, one thing that I would like to point out here is that that's true that China did have a role to play. That's true that Sri Lanka did fall to Chinese design. It's also true it's a victim of debt trap. We know what happened with the Hambantota port. All of that is true, but you also have to look at China is a victim of sorry, Sri Lanka is a victim of China is more of a effect than a cause. So when I say it's more of an effect than a cause, I want to say that China has a preference for countries whose own fiscal discipline is out of order. China has a preference for countries where leaders themselves rely on populism. China has a preference for countries that have authoritarian leaders. China has a preference for countries that do not build their own economic strength but are dependent on external, sources of funds to fund the leader's lifestyle or to have the most, fiscally imprudent policy. China has a preference for actors like that because China does not want you to grow and become strong and all that in the future. China wants you to actually, deliberately fall into Chinese design and declare your own assets, your own geopolitical, leverage and give it away to China. This is what China wants. So obviously China has a preference for that. But the main culprit would I always call Sri Lanka as the main culprit because Sri Lanka itself never set its house in order. Right after the conflict ended, right after the civil war ended, right after that, Sri Lanka did not stop its dependence on debt. If you look at their situation, the debt to GDP ratio, it's absolutely messed up. You cannot run a country like that. And look at the entire debt. Only 10% is from China. Where does the rest come from? They are all sovereign funds. Sri Lanka has generated all of them so much. So I won't say that China is the only culprit, but yes, there has been a recognition, and as a part of the larger problem, Sri Lanka would realize that what sort of a fiscally imprudent policies they were implementing since such a long time. So obviously there will be a they have wakened up and there will be calls to change their economic policies. That kind of recognition is there in Maldives as well.
Right.
And interestingly, I'll just tell you one thing. We talk about China
Yeah.
and we talk about Chinese interference. A very important thing that most of us in New Delhi or most of us in India fail to see is this, that China has been actively nurturing the
Right.
Islamic extremists against India.
As a country that calls itself
You look
communist,
at
I think the term Sino-Wahhabi alliance is today very popular because of the kind of alliances that China builds in West Asia, in South Asia, with a lot of these Islamist countries.
especially in South Asia, Sharan, just look at the kind of language
Hmm.
that Yamin has been using. He gave a speech. We all of us woke up after the day disruption event. But just look at
Okay.
a speech that he gave few days ago. He gave a speech that India is just like Israel. He said India is just like Israel. There is no difference between the two. Muslims are persecuted in
Right.
Israel, Muslims are persecuted in India. India has Kashmir, Israel has Palestine. So, this is a grand narrative, this is a meta narrative that is being pushed against India by not just Turkey, Malaysia, Pakistan, and Qatar, but
Right.
also China. China has been pushing this narrative actively, globally. So if you look at the fund trail, whenever any social, so you must have seen many social media storms, Twitter storms happening against India, calling India as Muslim genocide in India or boycott India. All these Arabic hashtags that have been trending from a long time. The moral pressure that's building on UAE, the moral pressure that's building on Saudi Arabia to
Yeah.
boycott India. They so Muslim Brotherhood, you pick up this Muslim Brotherhood and look at their strategy. They have a proper strategy of first boycotting India, then isolating India, then
Right.
they have the entire toolkit ready. Whatever they did with Israel, now they are doing with India, and there is active Chinese support. This same person, Yamin, he led a India Out
Hmm.
campaign in December 2021, and only in April did the Maldives government took strict action against him, and they declared that generating anti-India hatred in Maldives is equal to challenging the national security of the country. This is what
Right.
the government has stated on record. And this very person who's leading the anti-yoga day protests, calling it BJP's yoga day, BJP's, they have
Right.
declared BJP as the Hindutva party. The other, that is how the polarization is happening. BJP is the Hindutva party here, and whoever supports BJP is a Hindutva agent. And as against the Hindutva agent, they are pitting themselves that the Muslims are being persecuted. That's the kind of image that China is helping other countries support. It is not just Pakistan's, it's not just ISI's job anymore. It's become an international job to
Right.
invent this narrative. I'm calling it an
Right.
invention because you and I live in India. We live on the ground and we see how respectfully are the minorities treated. We know how much rights does the
So this
constitution give them.
explains a lot of handles and a
We
lot
know
of
how everything
activities
goes in
on
the
Twitter as
minority.
well, because you and I are both Twitter creatures, and India recently banned one of the handles. A watermelon went missing from the fruit basket. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
think this explains a lot of activities, but it's really interesting to actually hear from you about what exactly is happening on the ground, and that radicalization can happen even in such small countries, but unfortunately, we do not pay enough attention to it. But on the other hand, suppose India were to retaliate in the same language as many of the parties in Maldives do, it would be called a hegemon or a big brother who is trying to snatch away its last meal. So you can't even act decisively against some of these radical elements, right?
I disagree because there's a way to act against them. You, as a hegemon or a big brother or a bully, these were the terms that have always been used against India, even when India was not rising. Today we are economically powerful, today we are politically powerful, today we are everything that we wanted to be. But what about the 70s and the 80s and the 90s? Today BJP is in power, today Modi is in power, but just do a simple research today. Look at what the Islamist elements in these different countries called Indira Gandhi. For them, Indira Gandhi was also a symbol of Hindutva. We will be laughing. But Indira Gandhi was also called as a symbol of Hindutva. The 1971 Liberation War, look at the Bangladeshi newspapers, look at Pakistani newspapers, look at the books that have been written. Forget all that. There are journal articles that have studied the narrative around Indira Gandhi. And she has been addressed as a Hindu party leader. Congress though has all the credentials, no, for being called the secular, liberal, democratic, and all that. It has nurtured all that, but they called Congress also Hindutva party. So it has always been there against India. We cannot directly go there and say that these are the particular actors who've done all this. There are certain levers that every country can pull, and I think people of Maldives realize it. This is why the government was very quick. The investigation has been really quick. People that I speak to, my friends in Maldives, they are scholars, academicians, and so on. All of them have taken a moment to personally text me and tell me that India is a nice country. We believe in India's story. We want to be. So they have this ambition factor, and they look at India, this aspirational factor. They look at India as a possible role model. So all of them are saying that India is a nice country. We want to be like India. Tourism sector or other sectors, there's just a lot that India and Maldives can do together, because India as a development partner is very egalitarian, it's very democratic, it believes in equality, it does not dry your resources, you also gain equally in the process, as compared to China, where it generates the most number of jobs go to Chinese, your security goes in doldrums, literally they station PLA in your country. Every way, you just compare China and India, and they're very different actors. So there's a preference for India. There is a preference for India, and the truth is that if you look at the situation, India can use all of that goodwill to its interest. We cannot directly do it, but I'm sure the Ministry of External Affairs, people who are responsible for this, the bureaucrats, the ministers, the leaders, they must have definitely held some sort of dialogue with the Maldives counterparts, and I'm sure India must have been assured that such kind of events will not take place in future, because this was a state organized event, state backed event. India was backing this event, and something happening of an event like this kinds of chips away India's soft power as well. So they are really apologetic about it. The Maldives government is apologetic about it, and they have cleared that this all this will not be tolerated. So I hope the goodwill that India has been generating all these years, and after 2018, since Nasheed has come back to scene, and since Soli has become the leader of this country, they have taken extra caution. They have taken extra care to allay any kind of fears that to all kind of fears that India has with respect to Maldives. So I think our interests are protected in
But what
Maldives.
surprises me even more is that this is not some sort of a religious event that was going on. It was yoga, and everybody performs yoga. So, if even that cannot be tolerated, I think there are reasons that we should be worried about.
Interestingly, when you say that they did not target a religious event, it already depends on where are you coming from. You're right, many people do yoga, but the Hindu dharmics and the right wing will say that, yoga is Hindu. And actually that's true, because if you look at Hindu scriptures and you look at the entire philosophy behind yoga, it's not just simply you moving your hands and controlling your breathe. It's not a controlled breathe mechanism. It has very spiritual connect to it, and this spiritual connect is deeply rooted in the Hindu philosophy. But the problem is that the Sanatan Dharma and the Hindu religious scriptures and Hindu ideas are very open in nature. The approach is very open in nature, so we are open to other kinds of, so we will be open to learning Confucianism. We will be open to understanding yin and yang, and we'll start drawing parallels between Vastu Shastra and all kinds of, our knowledge system with other knowledge system. We won't have a problem with that. The Hindu religion and the Sanatan Dharma is like that. But some people are saying that, since the declaration of this particular day as International Day for Yoga, it has become a huge soft
It
power
has.
achievement for India.
Right.
It definitely is
Yeah.
a huge soft power achievement for India. Now, there needs to be a balance between someone say calling it Hindu and not making yoga globalized, and someone believing that it's fine, okay, let's just compromise a little on the Hindu
Correct.
thing, but at least globalize yoga. So there has
Yeah.
to be a trade-off between the two. It's fine if some people want to associate yoga with Hinduism. And today, what happened in Maldives was done by the Islamists. Forget yoga. For them, your
Right.
very existence is anti-Islamic.
So that's the root of where
So it
these
depends
people
on where
come
are
from.
they coming from.
Interesting. But if you do hear more about who exactly are the perpetrators, please do join us for one more conversation. And I think this can be extremely interesting, especially if we explore the roots of how Maldives was as a nation before, with its Buddhist ancestry and Hindu roots as well to a certain extent. And I think that is an entire episode for itself. But thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a lovely conversation. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I hope you have a good evening.
Thank you, Sharon.
Viewers, please do let us know what you thought about this episode. We'll be bringing out more such interviews in the future. My name is Sharan. Until next time, I'll be seeing you off.